weekend. The White House sees it as a critical opportunity to change the dynamics of what's been a difficult relationship between the two countries. But is the Chinese leader really open to a shift in that relationship? Dr. Adam Lockyer is a lecturer in US politics and foreign policy at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney and joins me up here in the studio right now. Adam, thanks for your time.
Good morning.
First of all, difficult relationship. Would that be a fair way to describe the relationship between the United States and China at the moment?
It's a changing relationship. So we have a new leader in China who has a very different style to his predecessor. So whereas who had a very formal and distant relationship with all leaders around the world, including Barack Obama, she seems to be more open and more personable and wants a more informal setting for these meetings.
So perhaps the relationship could become more positive over time?
Sure, and I think it would be, it's interesting to see the developing relationship between the two leaders itself. So we could see if not a friendship, then at least a more personable relationship between the two leaders, which will have a very positive impact upon the two countries' relationships.
Yeah, we should talk about the background here and what's created the difficult relationship that it's historically had with China. Can you talk us through some of the factors? Because there seems to be a mutual respect there, but there are still problems along the way.
Sure, well, there's always been a few bumps in the road, but I think that the defining characteristic of the US-China relationship is that they've always been able to overcome these difficulties. So I think that if you look over the long term of the past 40 years of US-China relations, the defining characteristic is a fairly stable one, with a few difficulties rising up, but both parties see it's in their mutual interest for the two countries to get along, and they've always been able to overcome these difficulties.
And it is in Australia's interest for them to get along as well, isn't it? It always seems like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the United States and China. We need China. We need to maintain a strong relationship there for our business interests. We, of course, export all those raw commodities over to China, but traditionally we've been on the side of the United States in most cases, and that's a strong defence relationship for us as well. So Australia really needs this relationship to run smoothly, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And so we have this economic triangle between the United States, Australia and China, and that's a deep interconnectedness. And so it is very important from an Australian perspective that China and the United States get along, and the Australian government works wherever it can to help smooth out the relationship.
What about when it comes to Korea, north and south? There are still problems there. It's still a hotbed in terms of conflict. We know that China traditionally seems to be siding with the north side of things, the United States with the south. Is that potentially a problem going forward for the two nations?
Well, we see a developing relationship there too, particularly between China and North Korea. So China's already viewed North Korea as a bit of a buffer between itself and South Korea and the United States.
How so a buffer?
So that you wouldn't have US forces and South Korean forces sharing a border with China. So that could be problematic. Right. So you have a geographic buffer between the US military and the Chinese military. Though recently North Korea hasn't been following its directives from Beijing, and so we see more trouble looming there in that relationship. And we see that China has, in recent times, been distancing itself from the North Korean regime. And so a lot of the problems and troubles that North Korea has currently been making has less to do with the United States than does with its relationship with Beijing. You could imagine a small child misbehaving in order to get attention from its parent. Yeah. And that's sort of a similar relationship that we see with North Korea and China at the moment.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest relationships to watch on the global landscape. Adam Lockyer from the US Studies Centre, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Well, we do need to take a quick break. When we come back, Simon Segal from Deal Reporter and also Ernst & Young Managing Partner Graham Browning join us for the latest on dividend washing and other dividend delights. Stick with us.